Hello everybody, this is Dr. Tushar Nair here, and today we are going to discuss the first chapter of your Flamingo, that is the last lesson by Alphonse Daudet. So here, in this name, T is silent, we don't pronounce this T, this is Alphonse Daudet. Now, how strange and how interesting and how ironical this is that the first chapter has been titled as the last lesson, or the last lesson has been taken as the first lesson of your book. So now let's see what it is all about. Background of this story is Franco-Prussian War. That means there happened a war, and after that war, what happened? The war was between, say, France and Prussia. And after that war, what happened? The two territories of France, that is Alsace and Lorraine. So these two territories were captured by the Germans. That means we are taking that as Prussia. So that was captured by the Germans, and they ordered that only German would be taught in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. So that is the background of this story on which the whole story is based. And the theme is linguistic chauvinism. See, I'm pronouncing this word here as chauvin. Now, chauvin means, actually, it was the name of a person, and that man was jingoist. That means excessively patriotic. So after his name, now the term is used for jingoism, patriotism. And here, as we are talking of linguistic chauvinism, that means love for language. So exactly if I define or explain this term linguistic chauvinism, that means excessive love for one's language or carrying pride in one's language too far. That is exactly linguistic chauvinism. And the main characters here, we have one, the teacher, M. Hamel, and the other is Franz, the student. These are the two main characters, and apart from these two main characters, we have some other minor characters as well that we'll discuss while going through the story. And now, let's come to the story, that how it begins and how the writer conveys the thing, this idea here in the story. So it is, I started for school very late that morning. Actually, the scene is of school. The student Franz is going to school, and that is how it begins. So I started for school very late that morning, and I was in a great dread of scolding that M. Hamel. He was afraid actually, and he was late for going to school. So what was the fear? Why he would be scolded? Because M. Hamel had said that he would question us on participles, and I didn't know even the first word about them. So that was the fear. So what is participle? Participle means verbal adjective. Participle means verbal adjective. That is participle, and this is actually a topic in grammar, but we don't have to discuss that in detail here. We just need to know what actually it is. So the teacher was going to ask about participles, verbal adjectives, and he didn't know even the first word about them, and that was the fear that if he would be asked about that and he wouldn't be able to answer, then definitely he would be scolded. So we have a question on this, and the question is, why was Franz reluctant to go to school? So this is the question, that why was Franz reluctant or unwilling to go to school, and the answer is very much clear, as I already stated, that he didn't know anything about participles. Now what? For a moment he thought of staying away from school, means he thought of staying out of doors. He didn't want to go to school. Moreover, it was all bright, it was all warm, and the atmosphere was very good. It was bright and sunny. The birds were chirping at the edge of the woods, and the soldiers, Prussian soldiers, were drilling at the back of the saw mill. So what drilling here, it's not that they were just drilling with a drilling machine. No, drilling actually is what the practice, the exercise, and all the training that these soldiers undergo, that is called drilling. So they were doing all that, birds were chirping, and so it was the whole atmosphere actually, warm and bright atmosphere, the sunny atmosphere, the chirping and twittering birds, the soldiers drilling, all that was so very good. It was all actually tempting. So what he says, it was all much more tempting than the rule for participles. Now here again we need to ask that what was more tempting than the rule for participles? What was more tempting than the rule for participles? So what was more tempting? The atmosphere, the chirping birds, the drilling soldiers, all that is to be written. So it was like all that was attracting him, all that was fascinating him, and he didn't want to go to school. But there was something else as well. Means though all those things were like fascinating him and telling him not to go to school, but he says, I had what? The guts. It means he wanted to go to school, so I resisted that temptation and I moved on to school. So that's what he is trying to say, that though the the things were tempting, but I could resist those feelings and I went to school. So that is here he is trying to say. While he was passing by the town hall, there was a town hall actually, and there they had a bulletin board, that is notice board. And for the last 2 years, they had all their bad news from there. So what kind of bad news? Lost battles, draft, orders of the commanding officer. So draft, what does that mean actually? Draft means what? The orders for the deployment of soldiers. Similarly, some words earlier like dread means fear. So they had all such news, and he thought without stopping, actually he was already late. So without stopping, he thought that what could be the matter now? Means why this crowd? But he didn't stop. He just moved away as fast as he could go, and Washter, the blacksmith, as I have given here. So Washter, the blacksmith, he was already there reading the bulletin board with his apprentice. Now, when he saw him, he just called after him and said, don't go so fast, bub, you'll get to your school in plenty of time. Now, Franz actually thought he was making fun of him. He was already late and he was saying that don't go so fast. Now, why? Bub, B-U-B, bub here means chap or fellow. And we have a question here as well, that two questions in fact. One, why was there a crowd at the bulletin board? Why was there a crowd at the bulletin board? So it was not because of the lost battles or draft. The reason was a new information had been displayed on the bulletin board, and people were there to know about that, to read that information. And the other one is, what did Washter say to Franz, and why? So This is now what did he say that I just quoted from the text itself, that don't go so fast and all that. And why did he say? Because he had already read the information on the bulletin board and he knew it was no use hurrying to the school as it would be the last lesson. So that was the reason. Now what, when he reached M. Hamel's little garden, what it was, he was all out of breath, was panting and puffing, and the atmosphere, usually what, just from the outside people could know that okay, the school was running, the children are there, because of the bustle, the hustle, the sound and all. What kind of noises would be there actually? The children opening and closing their desks. That means drawers, opening and closing the drawers. And what, repeating their lessons in unison with their hands over their ears to understand better, like this. And what, M. Hamel's little ruler rapping on the table. So all these noises would be there usually in general. But on that day, it was all so still, silent. Now, why? Now, he had counted on the commotion, counted on, that is relied on. Commotion, that is noise, uproar. So he had relied on the noise that, okay, nobody would notice. I would get to my seat and nobody would notice because of the sound. He had thought so. But on that day, it was as quiet as a Sunday morning. Now, why? The reason was actually, as on Sundays, there are no schools and it's all silence. Moreover, it's a day of prayers. Similarly, on that day, there was no noise. It was all silence there, just as it happens on Sundays. That was the reason. Now, through the windows, he saw the classmates sitting on their benches. The teacher was pacing up and down with his ruler under his arm, and he had to enter the class before everybody. Now, of course, he had thought nobody would notice, but the scene was all different. It was like all eyes were upon him when he entered, and he felt a bit embarrassed and frightened as well. Embarrassed because all noticed, and frightened because M. Hamel definitely would, like, there would be some flowers showered upon him, or what, there would be some bombarding. That means there would be some dialogue from the teacher. But no such thing happened. Instead, M. Hamel said, "Get your seat quickly, little friends. We were beginning without you." He was surprised actually. Instead of scolding, he simply, in a very polite manner, he said so. He jumped over the bench, went to his seat. When he was little over fright, that means when he got over his fright, he noticed what? M. Hamel was wearing his beautiful green coat, frilled shirt, and black silk hat, all embroidered over, which he never wore except on prize and inspection days. That means usually he would wear that dress only on prize and inspection days. But on that day, it was not the prize day, not the inspection day. Then why he was wearing that dress? He was all confused. And atmosphere all serene, silent, calm, cool. And the most surprising thing, what? The back benches, which were generally empty, the village elders were sitting there. Now, who were there especially? Hauser with his three-cornered hat, former mayor, former postmaster, and several other besides. Actually, whoever got to know that this is going to be the last class, they all came and just sat there. And Hauser had a primer in his hand. Primer, that means book of primary class. It also means a religious book. Here it is in small letters, so we can say that it might be the book of primary class. So now here he was wondering that what is happening here. So let him wonder and let's discuss some questions here. So here we have certain questions. So C1, it is what would be the usual atmosphere of M. Hamill's class. What would be the usual atmosphere of M. Hamill's class? So usual is all about the noise, the sound, opening and closing, that ruler, that unison, all that is to be mentioned here. Now we have one more question, and that is what would be or what was unusual about M. Hamill's last class? What was unusual about M. Hamill's last class? So we have that question, that what was unusual about M. Hamill's last class. Now we must know that it can be asked about the dress as well. So you must remember that too. So these were the things, and he was wondering about all this, and suddenly what happened, the teacher got up and addressing them, he said that the order has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine, and the new master comes tomorrow. I want you to be very attentive. This is the last French lesson. So this is what he announced. And when he heard this, what happened? What a thunderclap those words were to me. And it was like what? As if it was thunderstorm and lightning. So it seemed like that. Now why so? And what does this mean actually? So we have a question on this as well, that what a thunderclap those words were to me. So here, explain what does this mean. So what does this mean? What was actually that thunderclap? The announcement made by M. Hamill was the thunderclap. And why was it a thunderclap? The reason was it came like a shock to Franz, making him realize his negligence towards his own language, that he didn't learn, he wouldn't study. So that is what we have to mention here. And then actually what happened, he understood something, he realized something. Oh, the wretches. So that was what they had put up at the town hall. Means he got to understand that why the crowd was there. That to know that news, something that has been displayed on the notice board. So it was to know that, he got to know now. And moreover, there was a feeling of sorrow, regret, that my last French lesson, that how sorry I was. So he was having that feeling of regret, that I don't know my language and I must stop there, then I should not learn. So all this was going on in his mind. And moreover, not just what he would do actually, he felt that instead of learning his lessons, he would go and seek the bird's eggs, and he would slide on the Saar. So this is how he whiled away. He just passed his time. Saar is the name of a river here. So instead of learning his lessons, he would just slide and glide on the river, and he would just go and just steal and seek birds' eggs. So this is how he passed his time. And he also thought of his books, his history, the grammar, all actually which were a nuisance for him, heavy to carry. He just felt them like some burden, heavy to carry, nuisance. Now they all became old friends. which he could not give up. So it was like that, a bond, a connection that he realized. And M. Hamel, when he got to know that M. Hamel too was going away, he forgot everything about the ruler and how cranky means irritable, he was. So that is the change in outlook. So here we have a question that how did the announcement by M. Hamel, how did the announcement by M. Hamel change Fran's outlook? So here we have this question that how, so earlier it was burden, heavy to carry, nuisance, later all friends, M. Hamel's cranky nature, forgot about the ruler. So that's what we have to mention here. And now picture was getting clear slowly and gradually, that poor man. So it was in honor of the last class, he was wearing those fine Sunday clothes. He got to understand. And he understood why the village elders were sitting there. Because they were sorry too, that they hadn't gone to school anymore. He realized that they were sorry that they didn't attend the school, they didn't go to school, and it was their way of thanking their master for his 40 years of faithful service. For 40 years, he was there teaching their children and their children like that, and they were there to pay respect to their country. So this was the reason that they had all come. So we have a question on this as well, that why were the village elders sitting in the classroom? So here, why were the village elders sitting in the classroom? So answer is pretty much clear here. Now what he was just thinking about all that, still he was wondering, and suddenly what happened, he heard his name. Actually it was his turn to recite, definitely, participles. It was his turn. And what he would not have given to utter that dreadful rule for participles loud and clear and without a single mistake. Actually, he could have done anything to do that properly, correctly, but how? Only if he would know about that. But he didn't know even the first words. He confessed right in the beginning. And so what? But that day he tried, and what got mixed up on the very first words? Then what? Stood there, holding on to his desk, not daring to look up, and just heart pounding. That's what happens when you don't know the answers, and so. And happened with him as well. And now, but that day Hamel, he was unlike what he had been other days. He said, I won't scold you, little Franz. No, I won't scold you. You must feel bad enough yourself. See how it is. Every day we say to ourselves, we have plenty of time. That's the problem with Alsace. She puts off learning till tomorrow. So puts off learning, that is postpones. So the people here, they just postpone. And now what? See, we have not tomorrow. Now those people who, the Germans, they'll come and say, what? They'll have the right to say to you that you pretend to be Frenchmen and you can neither write nor read your own language. Of course. Then what's the point in calling yourself Frenchmen? They have the right. But he said, you're not the worst, poor little Franz. You're not the worst. we all have a great deal to reproach ourselves with. Now, why he said so? That why all were to be reproached, that is, blamed. He was trying to say that it's not the mistake of friends alone or the children alone, it's the mistake of all. They all had a part to play in that. So, how and why? Definitely, we must ask. It's quite an important one. So, let's see how. The question is, why according to M. Hamill were all to be according to M. Hamill were all to be reproached? Why? Because the children neglected their duty towards their studies, the parents too were negligent, and the teacher himself at times had been negligent. So see how what the parents, he said, your parents were not anxious enough to have you learn. They preferred to put you some farm or at some mill so that you can earn more support in earning or breadwinning. And he said, what did I do? Have I not sent you to water my flowers in the garden? And Sam Hamill himself. And he said, when I wanted to go fishing, did I not give you a holiday? So the teacher himself at times had been negligent, that when he would not be feeling like teaching, he would just give them a holiday or just would send them to garden. That's what he would do. So in this way, talking from one thing to another, he came on to talk about the French language. He said, it is the most beautiful, the clearest and the most logical language in the world. He said that we must guard it among ourselves. And when people are enslaved, now here the writer has used a and then people and are. So how it is possible actually? So I must tell you that people, the word people has two meanings. One, it is quite simple, persons, that you all know. And people has another meaning as well. That means a nation or community. So here it is that, but we need, there is a correction. A people are, that is not correct. We can say when people are enslaved or when a people is. So that is the way we use. So it should be simply when people are enslaved, it is the key to their prison as long as they hold fast to it. So if you hold fast to your language, you can come out of that prison. How? And how the language is the key to prison. So this is the another important one. We have how can a language be the key to prison? How can a language be the key to prison? So, how? Strongest means of communication. Using language as a tool, we can put across one's ideas. And in such times when people are enslaved, language can be used to what we can say incite or say motivate people, or first unite them and motivate them to rebel against the opponent forces. So that's how language is the key to prison. Now, okay, after this, what? He took a book of grammar, read a lesson, and a very amazing thing happened on that day. What? Friends understood everything. Now, before that, perhaps he never understood everything, but on that day, it seemed all easy. It seemed what M. Hamel never taught so patiently, and he never listened so attentively, as if it was all easy, the way it was being taught, and he was all sincere. And then, as if he was trying to instill everything, just fill their minds with all he knew. And after that, it was writing. They were given fresh copies, written in beautiful round hand, France, Alsace. So that was these two words actually were written there. I must change it to further that here we actually are. So what these two words were written, and they were asked to copy down those two words because none of them knew much. So okay, now all were set to work, all silent. When the copies were distributed, they seemed like flags floating everywhere. Once some beetles flew in and they made that certain sound, but nobody paid any attention to them. They all were sincerely busy doing their task, not even the littlest ones, the very small. Actually, it was a kind of a mix of all kind of students. There were small ones, the bigger ones, and the eldest ones. So all kinds of a mix, a blend of all that. And what those littlest ones, they were busy tracing their fishhooks as if it were French too. So it was like that, as if it were, means they didn't know even how to write, and they were those tracing those fishhooks so sincerely as if that too were their language. Now there were some others as well. Where? On the roof. And who were they? The pigeons. What were they doing? Cooing. So on the roof, some pigeons cooed very low. And listening to them, Franz felt, what? Will they make them sing in German too? These pigeons is very important for us. We must know, write, think. Will they make them sing in German too? These pigeons explain. So what? Why did he think so? When he heard the pigeons cooing in a low tone, he felt, he actually was already obsessed by the idea of German going to be taught in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. And when he heard the pigeons cooing in a low tone, he felt that even the pigeons disliked the idea. Moreover, there's one more thing. What it might be, he might have thought that these Germans are perhaps intending to have complete domination over the French. So that might be the reason he felt so. And then whenever he would look up from his desk for his writing, he saw what? M. Hamel, sometimes looking here, sometimes looking there, as if wanted to fix everything into his mind, trying to capture, just having a picture of all. And of course, fancy, imagine, think. For 40 years, it had all been like that. His class in front of him, garden outside the window, all the same, just only the benches, the desk and benches were worn out, threadbare. Of course, 40 years, children were sitting over them, so it was natural. The trees, the walnut trees were taller, the hopvine creeper. So climbed up to the roof through the window and twining through that. And how it must have broken his heart to pieces, of course. That you are serving at a place for 40 years and suddenly an order comes and you are asked to leave, that you are no more required, your services are no more required, you just leave. So it is, of course, intolerable, heartbreaking, and it was the same with him. The sister was packing things upstairs. Next day, they were to leave. But it was not that, okay, you couldn't learn all these years, now what would you do in just one day? Just wrap it up and you just go away. No, he didn't do that. He had the courage to hear every lesson till the very last. So, okay, grammar, writing, then history. The babies chanted their ba baby boo boo. Now what's this? Of course not Hindi or English. This is French. And so that is this ba baby. And down there at the back of the class, old Hauser had put on his spectacles and holding the primer in both hands, trying to spell out each letter. His voice was trembling, and you could see he too was crying. Yes, he too was crying. That we all wanted to laugh and we all wanted to cry. Now, why this ambivalence of emotion? What does this mean? Okay, so yes, we must write this. Why was there an ambivalence of emotion in the classroom? Why was there an ambivalence of emotion in the classroom? Ambivalence means having two contradictory emotions. One, they wanted to laugh, the other, they wanted to cry. Laugh, why? Because the way Hauser was reading, his voice trembling and spelling out each letter, so it appeared so funny that they wanted to laugh. Cry, it was the last French class, and after that, no more French classes. M. Hamel was going away, so that was the reason they wanted to cry. And okay, church clock struck 12, then the Angelus, special kind of offering in churches. The sounds of trumpets were there. Okay, M. Hamel stood up, pale. He looked very tall. So it was not that his height actually just turned from 5 to 6 or something like that. It was the stature, the character, the way he expressed his feeling for his language and country, and the way he tried to instill those feelings into the hearts and minds of those people made him appear so tall and towering. That was the reason. And now what? He just addressed those people and children there, my dear friends, but actually he couldn't speak out. It was all, he had a choking feeling. He took a piece of chalk and then wrote on the board as large as he could. What? Vive la France. That means long live France. What does that mean? Yes, long live France. So that was what he meant. And he couldn't speak at all, just he reclined against the board and with a gesture of his hand, he said, the school is dismissed, you may go. So this is how the class ended. And here we have two more questions. One, what is linguistic chauvinism? Explain with reference to the last lesson. Two, what is the background of the last lesson? So two more questions, all important, and one more important long answer type. This linguistic chauvinism is long answer type, and one more long answer type is everyone in the class was filled with regret. How? Explain. Another long answer type have been asked in your exams several times. Repeated. So that's it about your last lesson. This is the whole story. I have discussed each and every point and all the relevant questions that have been asked and will be asked in your exams. Like quite sure that definitely out of these, definitely some may be asked in your exam. So I hope it's all clear, the last lesson. Thank you.